And if you want to be a fan on Facebook, there's the Woodchuck Report. I've been expanding that media empire a little bit lately, my tiny little media empire. We now have a YouTube channel and Ustream channel, which is what we're doing now. We're streaming to Ustream, and then I moved that over to YouTube. So my name is Bonnie. I've been involved with the Libertarian Party since the Harry Brown campaign. It was back in the 90s. I've been going to the National Convention, as I mentioned, since about 98. I got into it by way of legalization. It was an issue I cared a lot about, and I was doing some stuff in college, and somebody came up and was talking, oh, you believe in lower taxes and legalizing drugs? You must be a libertarian, they said to me, and they were right. And almost 20 years later, here I am. And what I want to talk about today is a little bit about what we said, what Dan mentioned, staying active, but also sort of about a strategic vision for our party here. And what are we doing? What do we do well? What can we do? What do we have to offer the political scene in Vermont is what I want to talk about. So it starts off with keeping a calendar. We're about almost 4 months into the year right now. Has everybody done something for liberty so far this year? I hope so. Good. I'll tell you how my year started off. I started off really busy with Second Amendment stuff, starting in about October. The Burlington gun grab, as I sort of called that 4 months of my life there, where I was spending a lot of time doing outreach with the Second Amendment group. That's how I met Eddie here. That's how I met Scott, who's going to be talking later. Basically, for those who aren't familiar, Burlington City Council decided to put some gun grabbing measures. So it started off with public hearings in October, a couple of those, and then November, December, things are going by, and then it culminated in town meeting day. And so before that, I was going to the public hearings, and rather than talking to the choir on the Libertarian Party mailing list, I was interacting with the people in different gun groups across the state, from Gun Owners of Vermont, to the Second Amendment group that Scott is a member of, he'll be here later, Vermont Citizens Defense League, and it was a coalition, and I actually got to sit at the table where the gun organizations of Vermont were getting together and talking about strategy and what are we doing, and I was at the table saying, hi, I'm from the Vermont Libertarian Party. Not like you guys sent me there, but I was there at the table, and that's the kind of thing that we need to be doing. And I want to talk a little bit more about that, about issues, allies, and what are our strengths. So the first thing is keeping a calendar, knowing what's going on. I was really busy with the gun issue until town meeting day, and then there was a rally at the State House after that, and a legislative mixer. But then, I start looking at the calendar and what's going on. Springtime is usually a time I spend some time on legalization activities. 420 is usually a day you can go out to UVM campus and hand out a whole bunch of information to a bunch of kids that just happen to be sitting there interested in a particular issue. This year, 420, for those who don't know, it's a day where marijuana smoking is celebrated. It fell on Easter, so that was kind of off the calendar for this year. But I still decided to keep with my usual tradition of dedicating a few months of springtime to legalization and drug policy. Maybe you guys remember back in January, our governor decided to make drug policy the major issue for the state in his State of the State speech. I took that as a sign. He wants to make this about the heroin epidemic in Vermont. Okay, let's bring up one of these issues I've known about for about 15 years here, Ibogaine. Ibogaine speaks directly to what Governor Shumlin was talking about the heroin epidemic, if you want to call it that. It is an addiction interrupter. It is something that is Schedule 1, just like marijuana, LSD are, which means the government has said they officially don't have any medicinal benefit. But there's a huge amount of evidence piling up and studies that are legal to conduct outside of the country that show it's a very effective addiction interrupter. So that's how I ended up working with SSDP, Students for Sensible Drug Policy, down in Poultney at Green Mountain College. And I started up a website and a group I got myself labeled on their agenda for their meeting as the director of Vermonters for Advocate Research. I created a Facebook group right after I heard Sheldon's speech. And I got a local 802 number finally. I've been in Vermont for 10 years, and I really don't feel comfortable about publishing an out-of-state number, but I don't want to give it up either, so I've now got an 802 number and a local $14 a month plan, so I have something I can publish. And that's going to take me through, the next couple of months, and then after that, we have the Planning for Vermonters for Liberty. That's another group that I'm active with. It's a lot like the Vermont Libertarian Party in terms of the breadth of the issues, from left to right. They pretty much agree with us on the full spectrum of issues. They're nonpartisan. They're doing the same exact thing that the Libertarian Party is. There's some things need to be done by a political party, and those are things that are our strengths and advantages. Running political candidates or being one is a major one. When we ally ourselves with other groups, that's something that we can offer. If we're working with another group on an issue and somebody's very motivated, say, you want to run, if you can't get a lot, how do I say this tactfully? It's strategically advantageous to be on a major party line, but so this is something we can always offer them. If they agree with us, it's always something we can offer them, if they're libertarian, to be on our line. What's strategic advantage for other groups would be anything that doesn't require you being a political party, because if you're a group like Green Mountain Patriots, for example, or Vermonters for Liberty, if they're organized correctly, people get more bang for their buck because it's a tax-deductible donation. So that's how we have to look at our activity. What do we do within the political party? What do we do reaching out in communities, finding our allies on the issues, and other groups that have huge overlap with us, like Vermonters for Liberty, Green Mountain Patriots, and Young Americans for Liberty, I would say. There was a time when there was a segment of Occupy that had a huge amount of overlap with our issues on the left. So our overlap as a libertarian, we're going from left to right. Almost everybody here should have seen the diamond chart, the Nolan chart. Everybody above that straight horizontal line connecting the left and the right, everybody above that, I call that the line of freedom. They're for more freedom than not. And that reaches from the extreme left to the extreme right, and also the anarchist folks. You saw that both in Occupy and also in the Free State Project. People who agree with us on many issues, but they don't think politics is the vehicle to get there. They abhor politics. And that's okay, we can work with them too if we focus on it on an issue-by-issue basis. So, keeping your calendar so you always know what's going on with all the different groups you're following, and then watching the issues. There's certain arcs in legislation and in news cycles where things come and they go, and they're hot and they're not. I remember when Kilo, remember New London, eminent domain issue? I had never thought before that one lawsuit that the Fourth Amendment was going to be a major hot issue on my top 5 plus or minus 2 issues that I'm concerned with. So I want to talk about picking your issues. At any given time, there's going to be certain things that are hot and people are going to be receptive to listen to. And then there's certain issues that we will just always have as our core issues. Sometimes they coincide, sometimes they don't. Sometimes there's just an issue that we want to get on, even though it's not a major core issue of ours. Things like food issues. There's a group of people who are very interested in food sovereignty issues. Now, many of them may also, be interested in GMO labeling, which is not really a libertarian thing, but all the other stuff that they're doing, from raw milk to how many chickens you can have in the city to all these other issues with access to food, we agree with them on. So for a while, that was one of the hot issues. Lately, this year, I want to say for a libertarian-leaning person, the big things were Second Amendment. That's still going on. Scott Chapman's going to talk about that soon with 735. But the arc of that issue, the Second Amendment, started with S32 in the beginning of 2013. We have a 2-year legislative season. So it started off, there was a lot of activity on S32 really early on. That got withdrawn very early in the cycle. So things quieted down a bit. And then they heated up again around town meeting day, and then it calmed down a little bit, and then 7:35 came back up. And then the legislative season is going to be pretty much over beginning of May. The drug policy, the arc of that was many years ago we got medical marijuana. Last year we got decrim, we got an industrial hemp bill, and we've been told that 2015 is going to be the year that Vermont gets a shot at full legalization. So that's the arc of that issue in terms of marijuana legalization. But then Shumlin throws us a curveball and makes heroin an issue, where the New York Times is picking it up, and the media of the world is just salivating at portraying idyllic, rural Vermont with the scourge of heroin, and I don't see evidence that it's much worse than anywhere else in the country, but it's just a contrast. Makes it such a media talking point that I knew that if we're coming forward with a solution to their problem, they can't not listen to us. And that's why this issue of Ibogaine that I had let be dormant for years and years, suddenly that becomes really high on my list of priorities for getting the word out, talking to legislatures, outreaching with other groups, doing events with them, and I'm preparing, a 10-page info packet that we can give to legislators and journalists, and the goal is going to be to get some legislation in 2015 that authorizes Ibogaine treatment centers, and this is going to be a bill that sort of merges parts of the dispensaries and the hubs for heroin treatment now, which are mostly done with methadone, which is not an ideal way, even compared to other traditional maintenance drugs like buprenorphine. But the idea is to move things forward toward liberty, obviously. And you got to pick your issues. This one I thought was really helpful. I can talk more about that, but let me know if you want to know more about Ibogaine, definitely. Then the other top issues going on are healthcare, obviously. Jobs, education, taxes. A lot of these are perennial issues. Some of them are going to get more active and some less active. With healthcare, 2011, that's when that was getting a lot of activity, where there was something for libertarian activists to do. There were public hearings around the state. I wrote up a couple-page paper on my proposal of how we could improve things. But then there wasn't really much that could happen. We just had to wait and watch things unfold and watch the website fall on its face and get through that first period and how many people actually enrolled versus how many they wanted to. But it is coming up to the time now where healthcare is going to be a hot issue again. Just in the last couple weeks, this guy, I can't remember his name now, came up with, this consultant they had came up with a couple-page paper that they say is just rehashing what he brought up a couple of years ago. It sounds like now is the time where there's going to be a chance for people like us to put input in. And that's where I want to talk about what are our strengths. We don't necessarily have numbers. What do we have? We have some really intelligent people who know a lot about economics and can put together intelligent, financially sound policy that respects liberty, that Republicans should appreciate on the healthcare issue, that, well, the ways the liberals can appreciate us are mostly more on national issues, and I want to talk more about local ones. But we have that. We have the economic wonkiness here, where we've thought about these issues. We've reconciled the economic principles with the human liberty, and we have a whole national platform full of solutions that make sense and suggestions if only anybody would listen to us. So the healthcare is one issue where there's an opportunity coming up where we can try to make ourselves heard through letters to the editor or trying to get directly involved in the process, talking to the legislators, finding out who's on the committee, talking to Darcy Johnson, who's not going to be here today, Wendy Wilton will be, but those would be the people. Darcy, in particular, who's leading the Vermont for Healthcare Freedom, I think, is she still? Yeah. Going directly to her, because she knows what's going on, who's doing what, where, and the same kind of inside, trying to get to that inside politics, just like I got to see the inside of the gun control debate coming up, and get to the point where our suggestions can be heard, because we have great suggestions. We're really smart folks in general. So that's one of our strengths. Another one is our technology. When you look at the last election, Obama won over Romney for many reasons, but one major part was his actual get-out-the-vote technology, the nuts and bolts of having a better electronic system to track your voters and get them out on the day of the election, using the networking, using all kinds of advanced stuff. They blew them away. Romney's software, his voter get-out-the-vote software was called Orca. It failed on day one. He had thousands of people across the country sitting in these control centers without a system to use. And this is something where libertarians, I mean, look at us. The Ron Paul campaign is a better example than the actual libertarian campaign, but that's our movement. That's still our people. They innovated the money bomb. They innovated all kinds of networking and getting out information, making the banners. They have, Google Ron Paul. That was being done. They got the instructions out online. They used the network to get that information out, so this was happening all over the country. And also on the programming in the back end. We can do not quite what the Obama team can do at this point, because they have a serious head start on us. The Libertarian Party has done various internal, ballot-based, other get-out-the-vote software, but we need our own right here in Vermont. I attempted to make some forward steps on this. I wasn't quite as successful as I wanted, but this is a long-term project, building up our technical assets and our experience year over year over year. I started installing something called Advocate, and it's get-out-the-vote software where we can start, we can import the voter databases, we can start tracking the issues. Where do they agree with us on the issues? And then, what I had been hoping to use it for was for Burlington for town meeting day to help get out the vote. But if we have that kind of an asset ready, we can go to our allies and say, okay, we know you have a big vote coming up. Let's work on this together. We have a database for Burlington and some targeting information, hypothetically. That's one of the strengths we can bring to the table, but we've got to build that up. So, going forward here, some of the things I want to suggest to build on our strengths would be getting together a tech team, maybe getting a mailing list just for that. And then, in terms of the issues, we have people interested in different issues, and that's fine. I know there's some people who would prefer to work on the right end of the spectrum, and some people who work on the left end of the spectrum, and some people want to go talk to the anarchists and see what we can do. And that's great. Let's have some mailing lists, a working group for all the Vermont libertarians who want to work on self-defense issues, a mailing list for people who want to work on drug policy, so that we can keep these things going active and following the arc of the news related to this and the legislation and interfacing with the groups that have this as their primary issue and helping them move forward at key times. So I guess that's sort of my vision, where we use our strengths to make up for our smaller numbers and then gradually build up our numbers through things where activity will beget interest. And once we have some things we can point to, we can start doing more ads on Facebook and targeting people and things like that. But without having issues that we've been active on, without having current candidates, it's hard to attract more people. So we have to build this up, let it snowball, and that's going to help us grow. So that's the vision I want to suggest, and that we really focus on the issues, issue by issue. It's hard to, it's easier to keep an ally, a friend, if you just focus on that one issue. And that's something that I know some people here know about on the Second Amendment issue and just about everything else. When I'm working with the drug policy folks, I don't really mention all these other issues I get involved with. So, any thoughts on that?
I can speak from experience, that this does work. Especially we talked about a lot of things about the alliance building and building a team, and we're the smart mammals against the old reptiles out there on the political scene. That's how we really have to operate. We can't throw hundreds of bodies at something, but we can put two very smart people on a project. And that's really how the model, I think, has to be working in the future. A lot of these alliance things, I know you guys didn't win on the gun ballot issues, but you built a nice coalition now. So the next fight's going to be easier. And most people don't, I mean, political reality is you almost always lose your first fight. And just accept it and build on, so the next fight you can win. You know, if this thing comes up again, now you guys are all that step ahead. So I mean, if you were involved in these issues, don't be discouraged by your first. If you lose it first, every one of us who's been involved in politics can say, "Oh yeah, we lost, and then we won." You know, these long-term issues.
You just remind me of two other things I wanted to mention that I've been building up gradually. One is a news scanning program, and the other is legislation. Scanning the legislation off the state website, categorizing it by issue, and then eventually I want to work toward being able to send out alerts to people depending on what issue you're interested in. And I will offer that service on the self-defense issue to the gun groups in the state. And us libertarians, we have the broad spectrum of issues in common, but using these tools with our allies where our issues intersect is something I'm interested in too. And that's something else we'd like to get a tech team together to start working on these kind of long-term projects. Shane?
Yeah, when it comes to selecting issues, I'm going to use a couple military principles to say how we should target. First off, flanking is very effective. Picking an issue where they don't necessarily have an answer and one example is the ibogaine issue. The state government really has no clue how they're going to deal with this opiate and heroin epidemic. And, you know, they've got all these ideas about hub and spoke treatments, but they're really nothing new that hasn't been tried.
And I've been talking to people on the ground about how the spokes are not connecting to the hubs and how they're throwing their money into methadone instead of buprenorphine, and that's a huge, I can get more into that.
Right.
Go on.
So finding an area where they aren't necessarily there yet is a good way to really say, they aren't offering anything, here's something we have, but then overwhelming them at their weak points. And I think one of the biggest weak points that the supermajority has right now is this educational finance system. So we have the ability to go in and say, look, we can fundamentally change this. We can create a system that will work and that will provide quality education for all Vermonters, but it won't also break the bank. And I mean, on the right and the left, they're saying, we want to repeal and replace Act 68. Well, what's your plan? What are you going to do? We can offer a solution where they've offered some timid solutions, but we can really overwhelm them with a good solution and win that fight as well.
Couple comments on that. Yeah, education and healthcare are both areas where if we have a small working group of libertarians, they can come up with some superior proposals. Because when we take your language of flanking, we can be more conservative than the Republicans and more liberal than the Democrats at the same exact time on the issue, because we've got the solid economic basis, the argument for smaller government, less regulation, less interference that's going to appeal to the Republicans. We emphasize those points. The same hand, that same issue, we're also arguing for the civil liberties and going further than the left on those kind of issues, such as drug policy, where we can go beyond where they would even think of going.
So you offered to expand on this these drugs that you were talking about as a solution. I don't have I don't know a darn thing about this issue, except that Bain Capital Company bought and is operating in Brattleboro, and that is what the media selected to inform us.
Mm-hmm.
So I know nothing except some bias.
Let me give you some of the stuff that was...
I bet some people in this room share that same...
Some of the stuff I learned recently by actually talking to people who were active on this issue. There's a great doctor, Dr. Schorsch, who was out of Lebanon. He's treated thousands, about 1,500 to 2,000 patients over the years, a couple decades. He's an older guy, ready to retire, which is why he's finally free to speak out. And if you Google him, S-C-H-O-R-S-C-H, he got in a little trouble because he was taking care of his patients. There were no patient complaints that I could see, and I asked him about it myself. He hasn't had patient complaints, but the state wasn't happy that he wasn't doing as much paperwork as they would have liked. And he was trying to explain, you know, the more testing you do, the more paperwork, the more questions, you know, it's working against my treatment. I need to build trust with my patient. He was doing the best thing for his patients, and he got in trouble with both Vermont and New Hampshire. He's still practicing, and he's speaking out because he has nothing to lose anymore. He's ready to retire from that if he has to. He has other stuff he can do, as he says. And the real insight he was giving me, and then we talked to some other people who had different opinions, but basically methadone versus buprenorphine. Methadone is a cheaper drug, and the way they're managing it now, they can do it with low touch. They can have one physician supervising a hub and just other people who are not necessarily full physicians, just nurses and physician assistants actually dispensing the drug. It's a low touch kind of scenario. And that works for methadone because of the pharmacology of it. It works out. With buprenorphine, according to Dr. Schorsch, it's a lot easier to maintain people on a lot less of a drug. I can tell an anecdote that probably illustrates this better than anything else. He said he had somebody stabilized on an extremely low dose of buprenorphine. Now, some of the heroin addicts I talked to down at Green Mountain College were saying, well, you can never get off it, though. At least with the methadone, you can try to get off it. You can never get off of buprenorphine. But Dr. Schorsch is looking at it the other way, where very few people will ever get off anything. And he had people stabilized on extremely low doses of buprenorphine, and one thing led to another. Their situation got unstable. They lost him as a doctor, and he said 6 months later, this guy he had been meeting with for an hour once a month and having really, you know, intense trust-building kinds of conversations with the guy. He saw the guy at the methadone clinic 6 months later, ruling did not recognize him because he had been on methadone when he lost his access to this better doctor. So that's kind of what we're looking at now. Ibogaine is completely different. Both methadone and buprenorphine are maintenance drugs. The other option is detox. You don't hear anything about detox in Vermont. I don't know if anybody's doing detox. There's different ways to do it. Benzodiazepines. When I was down at Green Mountain College, I hadn't really researched it. I was like, I don't know, they give them a Valium and coffee, and that's kind of not too far off. And it's horrific, and there's, you know, severe cravings afterwards. Ibogaine is different. It's a plant from Western Africa, and it's an alkaloid. It does cause hallucinations. That's part of how it works. It's not a recreational drug. It is, by consensus, not an abusable drug because it's not exactly an enjoyable hallucinogen. But 36 to 48 hours later, you have no cravings. You have gotten through your detox with a bit of ataxia. You're limp. You may puke a lot. But you don't have all the other really horrible symptoms that you get when you're normal detoxing. And as other countries have been allowed to, you know, have allowed researchers to research it there, unlike here, they're finding that it has neuronal growth hormones in it, where it's actually rebuilding the neurons that have been ravaged by the addiction. The same ones that build up these loops where you're craving the dopamine and the serotonin and whatever, it's actually rebuilding those damaged pathways. So it's a completely novel drug. It's not legal here, but when I talk to the people in the Ibogaine community, the point I make about Vermont is that Vermont is the perfect place for this discussion to come up. First of all, they have to listen to us because they just said this is the biggest problem in the state. They really have to at least listen politely to anybody who comes forward with something that can be a solution. And they're just throwing $10 million at it, and we have the history of what the right would call nullification or the 10th Amendment, and the left would say, you know, legalization, man, you know. And it's an issue that we can sell to both left and right, and sell it to the Republicans. Wendy Wilson is here. She may remember during the campaign training seminar, I said to her, you know, how are we going to balance the state budget? You know, legalization, that might help. And we're getting to the point with the Vermont state budget where they really kind of need that to help balance the budget. So our position is just getting stronger and stronger. And in the last week and a half, a study was just attached to another bill to see how much money we would get from it. But anyway, that was a tangent there. It's just talking about how Vermont has not shied away from taking the lead, whether it's same-sex marriage, medical marijuana, or pretty soon in 2015, we're probably going to be joining Washington and Colorado with legalization. So anyway, Ibogaine is just a really powerful tool there. It's in the drug war warriors. If you're against the drug war, it's just a really powerful tool. It combats a lot of myths about addiction. If you ever saw the movie Traffic, you know, the image it presents, and a lot of people would like to present, is you do it once, you know, you're going to be passed out in your pimp's bed, and that's it, your life's over. But Ibogaine really busts that myth by saying, no, there's a reset switch that you can offer people, and it may not work for everybody. They may need a maintenance dose 6 months later to reactivate the effects, because it works on the physiological and mental level. Vermont seems like the place where we can make that be a choice for people, and it's all about choice. We're not saying everybody should do it. We're not saying it's going to work for everybody. We're saying echoing one thing that Sheldon did say was that treatment needs to be voluntary, and that people should have as many choices as possible. So, any other questions? What issues do you think are hot coming up this year? I think, I don't know if you guys know, 7 plus or minus 2, 5 plus or minus 2, that's sort of how I like to think about them.
Yeah, I'm wondering what the Libertarian Party position is about the healthcare issue. What alternative do we offer to that?
There's a whole list of things. I think the most important thing for libertarians to do is to acknowledge that, yes, there is a problem with the current system. It's not perfect now. Because they will try to crucify you with that. Oh, if you're against single payer, you must be for, you don't want the government to choose who gets treatment. You want people to just starve and die in the streets and all that. You have to say, yes, we acknowledge there's a problem now, but there's libertarian ways to fix it. And being able to buy insurance from out of state, being able to buy drugs from out of the country, different things. I have some ideas. I was, even going along with, let's say that the ACA is fait accompli, how do we work within that? Well, there's this thing called the Mechanical Care Organization. What if we did a patients union as a mechanical care organization? There's some ideas where we can think out of the box and try to find the most economically efficient solutions to these problems, where you are doing the least amount of disruption to the free market and just maybe providing a little bit to support the free market, like with a voucher for insurance, rather than saying, oh, let's have government take care of the whole entire thing. No, let's look at the problem, and the least interference we can do economically to address the very limited, precise problem, the better it's going to be for everybody. And those are the kind of targeted things. We want to focus on the uninsured, the undertreated, etc. The obvious thing, Dr. Schorsch mentioned this too when I was talking to him, is address supply. Where are they addressing supply? Dr. Schorsch said, I want to see money being taken from the criminal a way of addressing drugs, because that's actually counterproductive to the treatment that you're suggesting. Every money you spend on a criminal attack of the drug problem, you're not only not spending that money on treatment, you're working against the treatment. But what if, he said, what if you could take some of that money and fund some scholarships at Vermont Medical College with a kind of Teach for America sort of approach, where they then commit to work in Vermont for 5 years. He said, if we've been doing that since 10 years ago when he first suggested it to the governor, we would have a farm team of addiction specialists who could be training other addiction specialists in the state. And it's not too late to start. I asked him, what about getting some philanthropy? He said it would be great.
I have a follow-up question. I'm not sure about how the insurance rates work, but it seems like for almost everything in the insurance industry, there's an idea of the risk involved with a particular group of people. 16-year-old females are less expensive to insure than 16-year-old males. Are the rates for young people the same as rates for somebody my age? And should the insurance company be allowed to set the rates based on?
There's a thing called community ratings, and that's usually on any checklist of libertarian reform suggestions, is to remove community ratings, which says that you can't charge a smoker more than. Smoking is about the only condition that's exempt from community ratings, where insurance companies are allowed to charge more for that person. They can't pay they can't offer discounts in general to people who have healthier lifestyles or anything like that because of a thing called community rating. And that reminds me of one more thing I wanted to mention that is one of the strengths of a political party, just because of the type of organization it is and the laws that surround it, litigation. We are in a special place to help people bring lawsuits. For example, I would like to think that anybody who has to pay a penalty for not having insurance can join together in a class lawsuit, and let's talk to Darcy Johnson about that and say, hey, you know, you repealed the employer mandate, which let my employer, speaking personally here, offer me something that costs 20% of my gross income, and they say they don't have to do anything about it because you removed the employer mandate, but I'm still on the hook. You let them continue to rip me off, and you're going to charge me for it. So I'm going to be online, you know, to be in a lawsuit there, and that's something I want to talk to Darcy about. And that issue is going to be heating up for me personally, and I think we should all, you know, it's coming out of its lull period.
We actually had someone comment on our website telling a story about their struggles to get health insurance through the exchange. And because of the fact that there is no legal way to get health insurance in Vermont outside of the exchange as an individual, this person is now coming, or I think 5 days away from the end of the open enrollment period. And if he can't get health insurance by then, he has no insurance and he has no way of getting insurance until the next open enrollment period.
If he is not already in the process, it's already too late.
Right. So basically, that's the kind of person that person can start that lawsuit. And
yeah. I
see no reason why we don't win that lawsuit. I mean, that is the state coming in and saying, you cannot get insurance unless you use our website, which doesn't work.
Right. And that's exactly the kind of thing where let's go to a group where that is their special interest, and let's say, hey, we agree with you on this, and let's bring our expertise with yours. We're good at coming up with wonky, great, economically feasible solutions. Let's help you with that.
You made mention about the taking in New London 3 weeks ago. That project was abandoned.
I know. They took it all for nothing. They took the house, they destroyed the whole neighborhood, and it all fell through.
And that is so off anybody's radar screen.
And they've set the precedent where you can take anybody's property and give it to someone else who can make the state more money in taxes.
But as a counteraction to that, a whole bunch of states passed property protection laws. We passed a constitutional amendment in New Hampshire. There's a federal law now. You have to review eminent domain. So you saw a horrible situation. I used to work in conservation issues, and I used to hear local conservation boards say, well, we can use kilos of blah, 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 you know, and picking my jaw off the floor. But there was a huge counter reaction. And I guarantee if the Heller case, if we had lost that, we would have seen massive pro-Second Amendment waves through this country. So sometimes you can take victory out of defeat. Now, property rights is a big deal, but we fought the fight. In those next 2 or 3 years, we saw a huge backlash. And now in a lot of states, property rights are more protected, at least on paper. You still got things like local blight zoning and all this other stuff that they can sometimes get away with, but the hoops are a lot harder. And yeah, now all we have to do is take a video camera to New London, like, oh look at this abandoned field. We used to have houses and be a nice neighborhood. You know, how's that tax revenue coming now? So you have an object lesson. So I said, sometimes you can snatch victory out of defeat.
Yeah, I would never go and make an argument that worse is better like I hear some people do, but once the worst has already happened, that is the moment to jump on it. You're right, that was an opportunity that opened and it got taken and that was successful. And I was just talking about how the moment for action on healthcare is coming up again now, after a couple of years of, for us at least, not being able to do too much. I think an opportunity is coming up where we can have some input. It's coming up pretty soon. So that and education, we'll just run down again the top issues here: Second Amendment, the drug policy, healthcare, jobs, education, taxes. There's a wide array of issues. Everybody should pick a couple that they're really interested in and follow their arcs and up and down and work and do outreach with the group and then come back to us and say, hey, I'm working with these guys and these are our allies on this issue and this is how we can help them. And so anyway, I just hope that we can start focusing a little bit more on the issues and building our assets and tools.